The dust kicked up behind Sarah Bennett's worn boots as she stumbled into the trading post, her dress torn at the hem, her face streaked with dried tears and prairie dirt. 3 days she'd been running. 3 days since she'd fled her uncle's ranch and the monster he'd promised her to in marriage. The gold band on her finger, her mother's wedding ring, was all she had left in this world. "Please," she whispered to the clerk behind the counter, her voice hoarse from thirst. "I need food, water. I can trade this." She slipped the ring from her trembling finger, held it out like a prayer. Before you continue with Sarah's journey, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and give this video a thumbs up. It truly means everything to us and motivates us to bring you more quality content like this. Also, I'm curious, where are you listening from today? Drop a comment and let us know. The clerk barely glanced at her. "Ain't got use for jewelry, girl. Move along." Sarah's knees nearly buckled. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, hadn't slept in a proper bed since. The lady asked for help. The voice came from behind her, deep and steady as bedrock. Sarah turned to find a man filling the doorway, backlit by the harsh Montana sun. He was tall, powerfully built, with shoulders that spoke of years working the land. As he stepped inside, she could see his face, weathered but handsome, with dark eyes that assessed her situation in one sweeping glance. Jake Hollister. The clerk straightened immediately. "Didn't see you there." "I noticed." Jake moved closer, and Sarah instinctively stepped back, her hand clutching the ring. "Easy," he said softly, the way one might speak to a spooked horse. "Nobody's going to hurt you here." His eyes dropped to the ring in her palm, then back to her face. Something in his expression shifted. Recognition of desperation, perhaps, or memory of his own hard times. "Gold isn't what's needed here," he said quietly. "What's needed is mercy and common decency." He turned to the clerk. "Put together supplies, food, water, blankets. Add it to my account." "That's not necessary," Sarah managed, though her pride was a thin thing compared to her hunger. "I can pay. Keep your ring." His voice was gentle but firm. A woman's last connection to her mother shouldn't be traded for a sack of flour. Sarah's eyes burned with fresh tears. She wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain the dignity she'd been clinging to like driftwood in a flood. But her body betrayed her. Her stomach growled loudly in the quiet store, and she swayed on her feet. Jake caught her elbow, steadying her. "When'd you last eat?" "Yesterday. Maybe the day before. I'm not sure anymore." He guided her to a chair near the potbelly stove. "Sit. You're about to fall over." As the clerk assembled supplies, Jake crouched down to her eye level. Up close, she could see the small scar above his left eyebrow, the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples, the calloused strength in his hands. "You running from something or to something?" Sarah's instinct was to lie, but something in his steady gaze demanded honesty. "From my uncle. He arranged a marriage. To a man who—" She shuddered, unable to finish. Jake's jaw tightened. "You're safe now. That's a promise. You don't even know me. I know enough." He stood, pulling coins from his pocket to pay the clerk. "I've got a ranch about 5 miles north of here. My housekeeper quit last month to move back east with her daughter. I need help with cooking, cleaning. The work's honest, the pay's fair, and there's a room in the house with a lock on the door. Your lock, your key." Sarah stared at him. "Why would you help a stranger?" "Because somebody helped me once, when I needed it most." He held out his hand. What's your name? Sarah. Sarah Bennett. Well, Sarah Bennett, I'm offering you work, not charity. What do you say? She looked at his outstretched hand, strong, scarred, steady. Then at her mother's ring, still clutched in her palm. Finally, at his eyes, which held no deception, only an unexpected kindness. I say yes. The Hollister Ranch stretched across a valley where the grass grew tall and golden, sheltered by pine-covered hills on 3 sides. Sarah had ridden behind Jake on his horse, too exhausted to feel self-conscious about holding on to his waist as they traveled. The ranch house was solidly built, 2 stories of weathered wood with a wide porch. Chickens scratched in the yard. A dog, a blue-gray cattle dog, bounded up to greet them, tail wagging furiously. "That's Storm," Jake said, dismounting and then helping Sarah down. His hands were careful, respectful. "He's friendly, but he'll also bark up a storm as anyone approaches the house at night." Sarah knelt to greet the dog, who licked her face enthusiastically. Despite everything, she smiled, the first real smile in days. Jake showed her to a room on the 2nd floor. It was simple but clean, with a bed covered in a patchwork quilt, a washstand, and a window overlooking the valley. True to his word, there was a lock on the door, and he placed the key in her hand. "Bathroom's down the hall. There's a pump in the kitchen for water. I'll heat some for you to wash up." He paused in the doorway. "Dinner's in an hour, but there's no rush. Rest if you need to." "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "I don't know how to repay." "You'll earn your keep," he said simply. "But tonight, you just need to eat and sleep. Everything else can wait." After he left, Sarah locked the door and sat on the bed, her hands shaking as the adrenaline finally drained away. For the first time in days, she felt safe. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm that surprised Sarah with its comfort. She woke before dawn to start coffee and breakfast. Jake worked the ranch with 2 hired hands, quiet men who tipped their hats to her and kept their distance. She cleaned, cooked, tended the vegetable garden, and slowly began to feel less like a fugitive and more like a person again. Jake was a man of few words, but what he said carried weight. He never asked about her past beyond what she'd already shared, never stood too close, never entered her room even to make repairs. He'd knock and hand her tools through the doorway, talking her through fixing a loose floorboard herself. "You should know how to do these things," he said once. "Makes you less dependent on others." She learned, quickly, how to saddle a horse, how to shoot a rifle straight, how to read the sky for weather changes. Jake was patient, demonstrating once and then stepping back to let her try. "You're a natural," he commented one afternoon as she successfully hit the tin can target from 30 yards. Sarah lowered the rifle, flushed with pride. "I never thought I could do any of this." "That's because nobody taught you to see yourself clearly." He took the rifle, unloading it with practiced ease. "You're stronger than you know, Sarah Bennett." The way he said her name, with quiet respect, like she was someone worth knowing, made her chest ache with an emotion she couldn't quite name. One evening in late summer, a storm rolled in fast and furious. Sarah was bringing in laundry from the line when the first fat raindrops began to fall. Thunder cracked overhead, and suddenly Jake was there, helping her gather the sheets. "Get inside," he shouted over the wind. They made it to the porch just as the sky opened up. Rain hammered the roof like bullets. Lightning split the darkness, illuminating the valley in stark white flashes. Sarah stood at the porch rail, watching the storm with wide eyes. She'd always loved thunderstorms, the raw power of them, the way they cleared the air. "You're not scared," Jake observed, standing beside her. "Should I be? Most people are." She turned to look at him. Rain had soaked his shirt, plastering it to his broad shoulders and chest. His dark hair was wet, drops sliding down his face. He was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I'm tired of being scared," she said softly. "These past weeks, I've remembered what it feels like to be myself." "And who is that?" "I'm still figuring it out," she smiled slightly. "But I think I'm someone who isn't afraid of storms." Jake's gaze dropped to her lips, then quickly away. He cleared his throat and stepped back. "You should change before you catch cold." But as she moved toward the door, another crack of thunder made her jump, and suddenly she was pressed against his chest, his arms coming around her instinctively. For a moment they both froze. Sarah could feel his heart beating against her cheek, strong and steady, could smell leather and pine and rain on his skin. His arms were solid around her, protective but not confining. She could step away at any moment, and somehow that made her want to stay more. "Sorry," she whispered, but didn't move. "Don't be." His voice was rough. His hand came up to cup the back of her head, gentle, reverent. "Sarah." She tilted her face up to his. His eyes were dark, conflicted. She could see him warring with himself, see the moment he decided to step back. "Don't look at me like that," she whispered. "Like what?" "Like you want something you think you can't have." Jake's jaw clenched. "You work for me. You're under my protection. It wouldn't be right. What if I want you to?" The words escaped before she could stop them. "What if I look at you and see the man who saved my life, who treats me like I matter, who makes me feel safe for the first time in years?" He closed his eyes, breathing hard. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." She placed her hand on his chest, feeling the thunder of his heartbeat. "I know I think about you every morning when I wake up. I know I listen for your voice, watch for you to come in from the fields. I know that when you smile at me, I feel like the sun is shining even on cloudy days." "Sarah, stop." "Why, because you don't feel the same?" She was trembling now, but pressed on. "Or because you do?" He opened his eyes, and the raw emotion there stole her breath. "Because I already belong to you," he growled. "Have since the moment you walked into that trading post, looking like a warrior queen brought to her knees. Because every day is torture, wanting to touch you and knowing I shouldn't. Because if I start, I won't be able to stop. And you deserve better than a broken-down rancher with more scars than prospects." "You're not broken." Her hand slid up to cup his face. "You're the strongest man I've ever met. And I don't care about prospects. I care about you." "You don't understand." His hand covered hers, pressing it to his cheek. "My wife, I lost her 5 years ago. Fever took her and our unborn child in the same week. I swore I'd never let myself care for anyone like that again. It hurts too much when they're gone." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Jake. Oh, Jake." "But then you showed up, all fire and fear and strength, and I couldn't help it." His thumb brushed away a tear from her cheek. "I belong to you, Sarah, heart and soul, and it terrifies me." "Then be terrified with me," she whispered, "because I'm scared too. Scared of wanting this, scared of trusting someone again. But I trust you, Jake Hollister. I trust you with all of me." The kiss, when it came, was inevitable as the sunrise. Gentle at first, his lips soft against hers, questioning, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, when she pressed closer instead, his arms tightened around her, and the kiss deepened. It tasted like rain and promise, and the beginning of something neither of them had dared hope for. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jake rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything. I know. I'm going to court you proper. Do things right." Sarah laughed, a sound of pure joy. "We're already living in the same house." "Don't care. You deserve flowers and Sunday picnics and a man who tells you every day how much you mean to him." His eyes were serious. "You deserve to be cherished, Sarah, not just protected." "Then cherish me," she said simply, "starting now." He kissed her again, softer this time, sweeter. "I already do." The next weeks were like living in a dream. Jake was true to his word. He courted her with old-fashioned dedication. Wildflowers appeared on her breakfast plate. He taught her to dance in the barn, humming a waltz under his breath while Storm watched from the doorway. He held her hand during evening walks, pointing out constellations and telling her stories of his childhood. But the peace couldn't last forever. Sarah was hanging laundry on a bright October morning when she heard hoofbeats approaching fast. She turned to see 3 riders coming up the road, and her blood turned to ice. Even at a distance, she recognized the lead rider's cruel posture. Marcus Winters, the man her uncle had promised her to. She dropped the laundry basket and ran for the house. "Jake! Jake!" He emerged from the barn, took one look at her face and the approaching riders, and his expression hardened. "Get inside. Lock yourself in your room." "No, Sarah." He gripped her shoulders. "Trust me. Please." She nodded and ran for the house, but instead of locking herself in her room, she grabbed the rifle from above the fireplace and positioned herself at a window where she could see the front yard. Jake stood in the center of the yard, feet planted, arms crossed, waiting. The 3 men reined up in a cloud of dust. Marcus Winters was everything Sarah remembered. Handsome, in a cold way, with eyes like chips of ice and a smile that never reached them. Well, well, if it isn't the cowboy savior. Marcus dismounted slowly, his companions flanking him. "I'm here for what's mine. Nothing here belongs to you. Sarah Bennett is promised to me. Legal contract with her uncle. A contract she didn't sign." Jake's voice was steel, wrapped in velvet. "She's under my protection now. You need to leave." Marcus laughed. "Protection? Is that what they're calling it these days?" His eyes flicked to the house. "Sarah, get out here, girl. We're going home." Sarah's finger tightened on the rifle trigger. From her vantage point, she could see Jake's jaw clench. "Last chance to ride away," Jake said quietly. "Or what? You'll fight all 3 of us?" Marcus's hand drifted toward his gun. "I heard about you, Hollister. Big war hero. Lost your nerve after your wife died. Word is you're soft now. Test me and find out." The air crackled with tension. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She saw Marcus's hand move, saw him draw. The rifle report was deafening in the enclosed space. Marcus's gun flew from his hand, smoking. All 3 men whirled to stare at the house. Sarah stepped onto the porch, rifle trained on Marcus. He said, "Leave." Marcus's face contorted with rage. "You bitch." "Careful," Jake said, and something in his tone made Marcus freeze. "The lady just saved your life. I would have aimed for your chest, not your hand." "This isn't over," Marcus snarled, cradling his injured hand. "Her uncle has rights. Her uncle sold her like livestock. That ends now." Jake took a step forward. "Sarah Bennett stays here of her own free will. If you come back, if you send anyone else, if I even hear you've been asking about her, I promise you'll regret it. And unlike you, I keep my promises." The two men stared at each other for a long moment. Then Marcus spat in the dirt, mounted his horse one-handed, and wheeled away, his companions following. Jake waited until they were out of sight before turning to Sarah. She was shaking now, the rifle trembling in her hands. He climbed the porch steps and gently took the weapon from her. "That was the bravest, most foolish thing I've ever seen," he said. "He was going to kill you." "Maybe, maybe not." He set the rifle aside and pulled her into his arms. "But you didn't hesitate. You could have stayed hidden. Instead, you came out fighting. I told you I was tired of being scared." She buried her face in his chest, and I meant what I said before. "I belong to you too, Jake. I'm not letting anyone take that away." His arms tightened around her. "Marry me." She pulled back to look at him. "What?" "Marry me," he repeated. "Not because you need protection. You just proved you can protect yourself. Not because you work for me. But because I love you, Sarah Bennett. Because I want to spend every day for the rest of my life making you happy. Because when I think about my future, you're in every single moment of it." Tears streamed down her face. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, a kiss that tasted like forever. When they broke apart, he was smiling, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes and erased years of sorrow from his face. "I don't have much to offer," he said. "Just a ranch, a stubborn dog, and a heart that's entirely yours. That's everything I need." They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in town. Sarah wore a simple blue dress, and Jake wore his best suit. And when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared felt like coming home. The ranch hands cheered. Storm barked. And as they walked out of the church, hand in hand, Sarah felt her mother's ring on a chain around her neck. No longer a symbol of what she'd almost lost, but a reminder of everything she'd found. That night, in the bedroom they now shared, Jake was gentle and patient, his hands reverent as they learned the map of each other's bodies. "Go slow," she whispered once, not from pain, but from the overwhelming intensity of feeling safe enough to be vulnerable. "It hurts," she admitted softly, speaking of old wounds finally healing. "I'll die before I hurt you," he promised, his voice fierce and tender. "You set the pace. We have all the time in the world." And they did. They had mornings waking tangled together, afternoons working side by side, evenings on the porch watching the sunset paint the valley gold. They had laughter and arguments and passionate reconciliations. They had a life built on respect and trust and a love that grew deeper with every passing season. 2 years later, Sarah stood in the same spot where she'd first threatened Marcus Winters. But now, she held a different kind of future in her arms. A daughter with Jake's dark eyes and her stubborn chin. Jake wrapped his arms around them both, and Sarah leaned back against his chest, perfectly content. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About the day I walked into that trading post, ready to trade my last precious thing for survival. And instead, you found a new life." "No." She turned in his arms to look at him. "I found you. The life is just a bonus." He kissed her temple. "I'm the one who found treasure that day. Gold would have been worthless compared to you." "Together," she said, the word they'd made their own promise. "Together," he agreed. and in the golden light of a Montana sunset, surrounded by the life they'd built through courage and love. Sarah finally understood what it meant to be truly free. Not because someone had saved her, but because she'd been brave enough to save herself and to let herself be loved by a man who saw her strength as her greatest beauty. The valley stretched out before them, wild and beautiful and full of possibility, just like their future, just like her heart. The winter came hard that year, with snow piling high against the barn doors and wind that howled through the valley like a living thing. Sarah stood at the kitchen window, watching the white landscape while her hand rested on the swell of her belly. 6 months along now, and the baby kicked strong, just like its father, she thought with a smile. Jake burst through the door in a swirl of snow and cold air, stamping his boots on the mat. His face was grim beneath the ice crystals clinging to his beard. "Storm's getting worse," he said, shrugging out of his heavy coat. "I brought the horses into the barn, double-checked the supplies. We're set for at least a week if we need to be." Sarah turned from the window, and he immediately crossed to her, his cold hands cupping her face as he kissed her forehead, then her lips. "You're freezing," she murmured. "You're warm enough for both of us." His hand slid down to her belly, and his expression softened as the baby kicked against his palm. "How's our little fighter?" "Active. I think she's training to be a bronco rider already." "She?" Jake raised an eyebrow. "You sound pretty certain." "A mother knows." Sarah covered his hand with hers. "Though if it's a boy, I hope he has your strength and your heart, and your courage and your fire." He pulled her close as her belly would allow. "God, Sarah, sometimes I wake up and can't believe you're real. That this is real." She understood what he meant. Even after 2 years of marriage, there were moments when she expected to wake up back in her uncle's house, trapped and hopeless. But then Jake would smile at her, or hold her hand, or say her name in that way he had, like she was something precious. And she'd remember that this was her life now, a life she'd fought for. The storm raged for 3 days. On the second night, Sarah woke to find Jake's side of the bed empty. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and went looking for him, finding him in the main room, staring into the dying fire. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. He turned, and even in the dim light, she could see the shadows in his eyes. "Just thinking." "About what?" He was quiet for a long moment. "About how I'm going to keep you both safe, you and the baby. What if something happens? What if I'm not enough?" Sarah's heart ached. She crossed to him and took his hands in hers. "Jake Hollister, you listen to me. You are more than enough. You've always been more than enough. When Margaret died, my first wife, I couldn't protect her, couldn't save her or our baby." His voice cracked. "What if—" "Stop." She placed his hand on her belly, where their child moved strong and healthy. "Feel that? That's life, Jake. That's hope. That's everything we've built together. I'm not her. This baby isn't that baby. And you're not the same man you were 5 years ago." "How do you know?" "Because the man I married doesn't give up, doesn't let fear win. He faces down storms and bad men and his own demons, and he keeps fighting." She tilted his face up to meet her eyes. "I need you to fight now, Jake. Fight for us, for this family, for our future." He pulled her down onto his lap, carefully, always so careful with her now, and buried his face in her neck. She felt the dampness of tears against her skin. "I love you so damn much it scares me," he whispered. "I know. I love you the same way." She stroked his hair. "But we're going to be okay, all 3 of us. I promise." "You can't promise that." Watch me. The storm broke on the fourth day, leaving the world transformed, white and pristine and breathtakingly beautiful. Jake insisted on checking the property line, worried about damage to the fences. Sarah watched him ride out with one of the ranch hands, her stomach tight with worry despite the clear skies. They returned at dusk, and Sarah knew immediately something was wrong. Jake's face was stone, his movements stiff as he dismounted. What happened? Rustlers hit the Morrison place last night, took half their herd, burned the barn. His jaw clenched. Tom Morrison tried to stop them. He's alive, but barely. Sarah's blood ran cold. The Morrison Ranch was only 10 miles west. Do they know who did it? Marcus Winters and his gang. Jake's eyes met hers. They're working their way east, hitting every ranch between here and the territorial line. The name hit her like a physical blow. She'd thought that threat was over, that Marcus had slunk away after his humiliation 2 years ago. But clearly, he'd been biding his time, building his forces. He's coming here, she said. It wasn't a question. Not if I have anything to say about it. Jake pulled her close. I'm riding to town tomorrow, getting the marshal. We're organizing the ranchers, setting up a defense. How long do we have? A week, maybe 2 if we're lucky. Sarah pulled back to look at him. Then we need to prepare. And Jake, I'm not hiding in the cellar while you fight. Not this time. Sarah, you're pregnant, and I can still shoot straight. Better than most of your ranch hands, if we're being honest. She squared her shoulders. I'm not the scared girl who ran into that trading post anymore. I'm your wife, your partner, and I'm going to stand beside you, not behind you. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Together. Together. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. Jake brought in extra men, good men he trusted from town. They reinforced the barn, set up defensive positions, stockpiled ammunition. Sarah organized the house, moving supplies to safe locations, preparing medical equipment in case of injuries. Other ranchers' wives came to help, and Sarah found herself at the center of a community she'd barely known existed. Women who'd lost husbands or sons to men like Marcus. Women who were tired of living in fear. We stand with you, Mrs. Chen from the neighboring ranch said, her weathered hands gripping a rifle with easy familiarity. All of us. The attack came on a moonless night, as Jake had predicted. Sarah was in the house with 3 other women when the first shots rang out. Through the window, she could see muzzle flashes in the darkness, hear the shouts of men fighting. Stay low, she instructed, moving to her position at the upstairs window. From here, she had a clear view of the barn and the main approach to the house. She saw Jake below, directing the defense with calm authority. Saw him take down one attacker, then another. Saw him move with the deadly grace of a man who'd been to war and survived. Then she saw Marcus, illuminating the darkness like a ghost from her nightmares. He was circling around, trying to flank their position, trying to get to the house, trying to get to her. Sarah's hands were steady as she raised the rifle. She tracked his movement, waiting for the perfect shot. He was 50 yards out now, 40, 30. She squeezed the trigger. The shot went wide, intentionally. It kicked up dirt inches from Marcus's feet, and he froze, looking up at the house. Even in the darkness, she could feel his rage. Sarah! Jake's shout carried across the yard. He'd seen Marcus too, was running toward the house. Marcus raised his gun, and for a heart-stopping moment, Sarah thought he was aiming at her. But then she saw the angle was wrong. He was aiming at Jake's back. She didn't think, didn't hesitate. She adjusted her aim and fired. Marcus went down with a scream, clutching his leg. The gun flew from his hand. Jake reached him seconds later, kicking the weapon away and pressing his own rifle to Marcus's head. Sarah couldn't hear what they were saying, but she saw Marcus's face, saw the moment he realized he'd lost. The marshal arrived with a posse at first light, taking Marcus and his surviving gang members into custody. The attack had been fierce, but brief. 2 ranch hands wounded, 1 seriously. But no deaths. The defensive preparations had worked. Sarah found Jake in the barn, checking on the horses. He was bleeding from a gash above his eye, his shirt torn and dirty. But he was alive, whole. She ran to him, and he caught her up, as much as he could with her pregnant belly between them, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "You saved my life," he said into her hair. "Again. You'd do the same for me. Have done the same." He pulled back to look at her, his hands framing her face. "When I saw him aiming at me, I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of leaving you alone, of our baby growing up without a father. But you didn't. We're here. We're alive. Together." "Together," he echoed, and kissed her like he was drowning and she was air. Spring came to the valley in an explosion of wildflowers and new grass. Sarah's belly was enormous now, the baby due any day, according to Doc Morrison. She moved through the house like a ship in full sail, one hand pressed to her aching back, the other resting on her stomach. "Sit down," Jake said for the 100th time that day. "You're supposed to be resting." "I've been sitting for hours. I need to move." She waddled to the kitchen, determined to at least make dinner, even if Jake had taken over most of her other chores. "Stubborn woman," he muttered, but she heard the affection in his voice. "Stubborn man," she shot back. "I wonder who our child will take after." "Both of us, probably. Poor kid doesn't stand a chance." Sarah laughed, then gasped as a sharp pain lanced through her middle. Her hand flew to her belly. Jake was at her side in an instant. "What is it? What's wrong?" "I think another pain, stronger this time." She gripped the table edge. "I think the baby's coming." His face went pale. "Now? But Doc said another week at least." "Babies don't follow schedules, Jake." She tried to smile through the pain. "You need to ride for Doc Morrison, fast." "I'm not leaving you." "Jake?" "No." His voice was firm. "I'll send Charlie for the doc. I'm staying right here with you." He helped her to their bedroom, and Sarah was grateful for his steady presence, even as another contraction hit. They came faster than she expected, harder than she'd imagined possible. "Jake," she gasped, gripping his hand so tight she knew she must be hurting him. "Something's wrong. It's too fast, too hard." "You're doing fine," he said, though she could hear the fear beneath his calm exterior. "You're the strongest person I know. You can do this." But as the hours wore on, and Doc Morrison still hadn't arrived, Sarah began to wonder if strength would be enough. The pain was blinding, consuming. She'd faced down killers and storms, and her own demons. But this was different. This was her body, tearing itself apart to bring new life into the world. "I can't," she sobbed at one point, exhausted beyond measure. "Jake, I can't do this." "Yes, you can." He was behind her, supporting her weight as she knelt on the bed. His voice was steady in her ear, his arms strong around her. "You're Sarah Hollister. You can do anything, and you're not alone. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise?" "I promise. Now breathe with me, in and out. That's it. You've got this." She didn't know where he'd learned about childbirth, but she was grateful for every word, every touch, every moment of his unwavering support. He wiped her face with cool cloths, held her through the contractions, never once looked away, no matter how hard it got. When Doc Morrison finally burst through the door 2 hours later, Sarah was too far gone to care. The baby was coming whether anyone was ready or not. "Push," Doc instructed, and Sarah bore down with everything she had left. "That's it," Jake urged. "One more, sweetheart. Just one more." And then a cry. Thin and reedy, and absolutely perfect. "It's a girl," Doc announced, and Sarah collapsed back against Jake, tears streaming down her face. "A daughter," Jake whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We have a daughter." Doc cleaned the baby and wrapped her in a soft blanket, then placed her in Sarah's arms. She was tiny, red-faced, with a shock of dark hair and lungs that clearly worked just fine. "She's perfect," Sarah breathed. Jake reached out with one finger to stroke the baby's cheek. And she immediately turned toward his touch, her tiny mouth opening. He laughed, a sound of pure, unfiltered joy. "What should we name her?" he asked. Sarah looked down at their daughter, this miracle they'd created together, and knew immediately. Hope. Her name is Hope Margaret Hollister. Jake's eyes filled with tears. Margaret, after his first wife. After the baby he'd lost. Sarah saw him understand what she was offering. Not forgetting the past, but honoring it while embracing their future. "Hope," he repeated softly. "It's perfect." He kissed Sarah's forehead, then bent to press a feather-light kiss to their daughter's head. "Welcome to the world, Hope. You have no idea how loved you already are." 5 years passed like water flowing, sometimes smooth, sometimes rough, but always moving forward. The ranch prospered. Hope grew into a wild little thing, with her father's dark eyes and her mother's fierce spirit, equally comfortable helping Jake with the horses or following Sarah through her expanded garden. On this particular morning, Sarah stood in that same garden, harvesting vegetables for dinner, while Hope helped by eating more strawberries than she put in the basket. The sound of hoofbeats made her look up, shading her eyes against the summer sun. A woman rode into the yard, young, maybe 19 or 20, with hollow eyes and bruises fading on her arms. She dismounted awkwardly, nearly falling, and Sarah's heart clenched with recognition. She'd seen that look before, in her own reflection, 5 years ago. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked gently. The woman flinched at the sound of her voice. I'm looking for Jake Hollister. They said in town that he helps people who are running," Sarah finished quietly. "Yes, he does. We both do." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "My name is Emma Wright. My father, and there's a man he wants me to marry, but he's cruel, and I can't." "You don't have to explain." Sarah moved closer, careful not to spook her like a wild horse. "You're safe here. Do you have any belongings?" "Just this." Emma held up a small cloth bag. Then, hesitantly, she pulled out a silver locket. "I can pay. This was my mother's. It's all I have, but—" "Keep it," Sarah said firmly. "Your mother's locket isn't currency, it's love. And you don't have to buy safety here. It's freely given." Emma stared at her, disbelieving. Hope chose that moment to toddle over. Strawberry juice smeared across her face, and offered the woman a berry. "For you," she said solemnly. "You look sad." Emma took the berry with shaking hands and started to cry in earnest. Sarah wrapped an arm around her shoulders and guided her toward the house, just as Jake emerged from the barn. He took in the scene in one glance. the frightened woman, Sarah's protective stance, Hope's concerned little face, and his expression softened with understanding. "Another one?" he asked quietly when he reached them. "Another one," Sarah confirmed. Over the years, they'd taken in 7 women like Emma. Women running from violence, from forced marriages, from lives that would have destroyed them. The ranch had become something more than just a home. It had become a sanctuary, a place where broken people could heal and find their strength again. "Emma, this is my husband, Jake," Sarah said. "Jake, this is Emma Wright. She needs our help." Jake nodded, his manner calm and respectful. "You're welcome here as long as you need, Miss Wright. We've got a room prepared, food, and work if you want it. No one will hurt you here. You have my word." "Why?" Emma whispered. "Why would you help a stranger?" Sarah and Jake's eyes met over her head, and Sarah smiled. "Because someone once helped me when I needed it most, and because everyone deserves a chance to write their own story." Later that night, after Emma had been settled into the spare room with a good meal and clean clothes, after Hope had been tucked into bed with her favorite story, Sarah found Jake on the porch, staring out at the valley they'd built their life in. She settled beside him, and he automatically put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Taking in all these women, the extra work, the danger sometimes when their families come looking?" "Never." He kissed the top of her head. "Do you?" "Not for a second." She turned in his arms to face him. "Do you know what I was thinking today when Emma arrived?" "What?" "That I'm looking at my past. That scared girl with nothing but her mother's ring and more courage than sense." She smiled. "And I realized I'm not her anymore. I'm the woman who gets to offer sanctuary now, instead of seeking it. The woman who can be strong for others because you taught me how to be strong for myself. You were always strong, Sarah. I just help you remember. We helped each other remember." She cupped his face, feeling the familiar roughness of his beard, the warmth of his skin. "I belong to you, Jake Hollister. Today, tomorrow, and every day after. Not because I have to, but because I choose to." "And I belong to you," he said, echoing the words that had become their private vow. Always. They kissed in the moonlight, surrounded by the life they'd built through courage and love, and an unwavering belief in second chances. Inside the house, Emma slept peacefully for the first time in months, and Hope dreamed innocent dreams of horses and strawberries, and a world where she was safe and loved. The valley stretched out before them, wild and beautiful and full of possibility. Just like every day that came before. Just like every day that would come after. Together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Sarah and Jake's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.